guys, are you enjoying the final season of Golden Kamuy? We're already halfway through it, and there's a lot going on with Lieutenant Tsurumi. Today, I'm going to introduce real-life figures who inspired 4 characters in the series, including him. I also have part 1 where I talk about Sugimoto, Shiraishi, and 2 other characters, so if you haven't seen it yet, please check that out too. Alright, let's start with Lieutenant Tsurumi. His full name is Tokushiro Tsurumi. He's an officer in the 7th Division who fought in the Russo-Japanese War. He's known for his white forehead guard because he suffered a serious head injury in the war. And story-wise, Tsurumi is chasing the hidden goal to build a military regime. He starts off terrifying, but as the story goes on, he becomes layered, charismatic, intelligent, and affectionate. According to the official fanbook, Tsurumi was inspired by a real person named Tokushiro Hasegawa. He was actually the grandfather of someone who was close to Noda Sensei's father. And it wasn't just a name that influenced Tsurumi, but also Hasegawa's mysterious life. Like Tsurumi, Hasegawa was from Niigata Prefecture. He joined the Japanese military in 1903 at age 20, and the Russo-Japanese War began the following year. And somehow, he left the military while the war was still ongoing. Which makes you stop and think, how does that even happen? It's quite unusual, right? After leaving the military, he started running a photo studio in Hokkaido. And just 2 years later, he moved to Russia and opened another photo studio there. Okay, so where did the money come from? Running multiple businesses and moving overseas must have been really expensive. Something doesn't add up. Years later, he returned to Hokkaido, got married, and ran yet another photo studio. And here's the thing, not a single member of his family, not his wife, not his children, ever knew he'd been to Russia. They only found out after he passed away when they discovered his resume among his belongings. He kept that secret his whole life. They didn't find any clear proof, but it's believed that Tokushiro Hasegawa may have been involved in intelligence work. In Golden Kamuy, they really dive into that concept. Tsurumi uses the alias Koichi Hasegawa while operating in pre-war Russia. Okay, the same family name here. And his cover job is a photo studio owner. And the name Koichi means happiness, which is pretty fitting since Tsurumi even marries a local woman in Russia, and they have a child together. For a while, he seems to live this happy, ordinary life. But that life comes to a sudden end. His spy identity is uncovered by Russian authorities, and they send a unit to capture him. During the shootout, his wife and baby are killed. Tsurumi leaves Russia in anguish, but he takes something with him. That's the small finger bone of his daughter, which he carries throughout the story. And yes, that small finger bone. This is another personal item that once belonged to real Tokushiro Hasegawa himself. Why would someone keep something like that? For a child's bone to remain and for someone to carry it with him. No matter how you try to explain it, it's hard to imagine anything but a deeply tragic story. The full story may never be known. And here's another possible inspiration. Shinichiro Sumi, who served as the commander of the 7th Division. Like Lieutenant Tsurumi, he was also involved in intelligence work. A few decades after the era in Golden Kamuy, he was sent to fight against Russia. Sumi's unit achieved significant success on the battlefield. However, he was effectively forced into retirement because he openly refused a reckless plan proposed by his superior officer. Back then, military orders were absolute, so it says a lot about Sumi's strong principles. Interestingly, Lieutenant Tsurumi is portrayed in a very similar way. In the Battle of Hill 203 during the Russo-Japanese War, Tsurumi is described as being critical of a reckless strategy ordered by his superiors. And despite the fact his unit achieved remarkable results, he is stuck at the rank of lieutenant, a surprisingly low position given his service record. That parallel is hard to ignore. And one more thing, when you think of Lieutenant Tsurumi, The white forehead guard immediately comes to mind, right? As a character design choice, it's incredibly effective. You see it once and you'll never forget him. I looked into, but I couldn't find any solid historical evidence that enamel was actually used as a scar cover in real life. That said, when it comes to the idea of a custom-made cover for facial injuries, there is something that might have inspired it. The work of Anna Coleman Ladd. She was a sculptor who created masks for soldiers who had suffered severe facial injuries during World War I. Using extremely thin copper, she crafted masks that matched the soldiers' original features. We don't have photos of her making a forehead piece specifically, but if you take one of her lower face masks and mentally slide it upward to the forehead, you can suddenly see Lun and Tsurumi. In both cases, they weren't just coverings. They were about preserving dignity and identity. In that way, there's a shared spirit between the two. Next up is Hyakunosuke Ogata. He's a sniper in the 7th Division with almost unreal accuracy. He works under Tsurumi, then becomes a deserter, and basically moves through the story like a walking question mark. With his sharp looks, complicated background, twisted personality, and that dangerously sexy voice played by Kenjiro Tsuda, Ogata is often seen as the kind of character you fall into and can't escape. Ogata is often said to have two major inspirations. The first is Carlos Hathcock, a legendary U.S. Marine sniper from the Vietnam War. And a key connection here is their shooting position. Hathcock was known for stabilizing his rifle by sitting down, raising one knee, and resting his elbow on it for support. And Ogata does the exact same posture in the manga and anime. When you see it side by side, it's obvious. And there's another point I find really interesting. Hathcock wasn't just a sniper. He also trained future snipers and helped build the system. And Ogata has this moment where he looks back on the war and says, if there had been a unit of precision marksmen like me, many soldiers would still be alive today. Personally, this part really surprised me. I remember thinking, oh, he does care about the people around him. Up until then, my image of Ogata was basically highly skilled, cunning, and the kind of guy who wouldn't care if anyone else lived or died. So I realized I might have misjudged him a little. That said, I don't think this moment is about empathy for individuals. It feels more like Ogata pointing out the organizational downside. And considering it's mentioned that Ogata was well regarded by his superiors, it's pretty clear he was actually very competent within a military organization. He does his job, he's effective, he just happens to be emotionally unstable. That's Ogata in a nutshell. Anyway, there's one more connection between them. There's a movie inspired by Carlos Hathcock called Sniper. And interestingly, the Japanese title of that film is The Mountain Cat Never Sleeps. That mountain cat part is where things connect to Ogata. Ogata's mother was a former geisha, and because of that, people in the army secretly called him the child of a mountain cat. At the time Golden Kamuy is set, mountain cat was reportedly slang for a geisha, a mocking way to refer to his background. The movie itself doesn't mean it in that way, of course. And in Golden Kamuy, the expression is also used less negatively to emphasize his cat-like nature. The overlap is still pretty fascinating. And then there's the second influence, Simo Häyhä, the legendary Finnish sniper from the Winter War. Ogata claims he can reliably hit a target within 300 meters. Häyhä was known for the same thing. He also fought in extremely cold, wearing white camouflage to blend into snow. Ogata's white cloak suddenly makes more sense when you think about him as a real sniper. And then there's one more detail that links Häyhä to Ogata. In the Ogata versus Vasily fight, Ogata stays hidden in the snow for hours, waiting for Vasily to make a move. At one point, he puts snow in his mouth, and that was a real sniper technique used by Simo Häyhä. In freezing weather, your breath can become visible. So by holding snow in your mouth, you reduce the warmth of your breath and become harder to detect. I knew nothing about military history before this, so learning that people like this actually existed was pretty surprising. Next up is Yasaku Edogai. Fair warning. He's the kind of character that made some people stop watching the series. If you're not comfortable with disturbing content, feel free to skip this part. Okay? He's a young craftsman who runs a taxidermy workshop in Yubari. On the surface, he looks clean-cut and gentle, the kind of guy you'd never suspect. But his hidden side is deeply disturbing. He secretly steals corpses from graves and uses their skin to create his work. He even keeps things like human taxidermy and clothing made from human skin. There are also strong hints in the story that Edogai used to be abused by his mother. After her death, he turned her into a piece of taxidermy and kept her in his home. He continues to hear her voice in his head, showing how deeply her influence had taken hold. In the series, he works under Tsurumi, creating fake tattooed human skins and throwing the entire gold hunt into chaos. Edogai is said to be inspired by a real-life murderer named Ed Gein. He was born in 1903 in Wisconsin, the US, and his mother was an extremely strict religious fanatic. She despised her husband, who struggled with alcohol and couldn't hold on a steady job. Over time, she came to see all men as sinful and corrupt. She was also extremely ascetic and imposed those beliefs on her son. She repeatedly told Ed that humans were born evil, that drinking alcohol was sinful, and that all women, except herself, were immoral servants of the devil. When Ed tried to make friends, his mother would deliberately push them away, isolating him from the outside world. In Golden Kamuy, Edogai is haunted by the voice of his deceased mother. That voice puts his father down, much like Ed Gein's mother did in real life. Even as an adult, Ed Gein continued to live with his mother. When she became ill, he devoted himself to caring for her. But eventually, she passed away. Like Edogai, Gein was left completely alone after losing his mother. There's one important difference, though. In Golden Kamuy, Edogai is portrayed as a grave robber, but Ed Gein went further. He also committed a murder. One winter morning, the owner of a local hardware store, Bernice Worden, went missing. Gein had been seen at the store that same day, so police searched his property. There, they discovered Worden's body. And during the search, they also found objects made from human skin. Clothes, clothing, even pieces of furniture. Many of them were made from bodies that had been dug up from local graves. Some of these images are available online, but I'm not going to show them here. If you choose to look them up, be prepared. Once you know Ed Gein's story, going back to the manga or anime is honestly chilling. And finally, let's talk about Kano Ienaga. She's one of the tattooed escapees, originally a doctor. After escaping from prison, she disguises herself as the owner of a hotel and murders her guests. Her reasons? Well, you have to watch the series to find out. Because of that, the hotel she runs, the Sapporo World Hotel, is filled with hidden passages and elaborate traps. The model for Ienaga's Sapporo World Hotel is said to be an American serial killer named Henry Howard Holmes. Holmes held a medical degree and gained experience in human anatomy at university. He later worked as a pharmacist and became a successful businessman. In 1893, during the Chicago World's Fair, he opened what was known as the World's Fair Hotel. It was a large, three-story building, so the neighbors called it Holmes Castle. But the guests who stayed there began disappearing one after another. Holmes had designed the hotel specifically to murder and torture tourists who came to Chicago for the World's Fair. The structure of the hotel is directly echoed in Ienaga's Sapporo World Hotel. There were peepholes in guest rooms, sliding hidden doors, and even trapdoors. The building was also filled with secret corridors that allowed movement between every room. In the basement, there were tools for torture and dissection, To avoid suspicion, Holmes hired multiple constructors in sequence, ensuring that no one but him understood the hotel's full structures. He was eventually arrested and executed by hanging. It's often said that he murdered over 200 people, and that his hotel later burned down under suspicious circumstances. The destruction of the hotel mirrors what happens to Ienaga's hotel in the series. However, this part is important. Many aspects of Holmes' story was exaggerated or dramatized later on. Some researchers believe the hotel was never wholly completed and that the number of his victims was likely much lower. And one last thing, the live-action drama adaptation of Golden Kamuy does an incredible job recreating the hotel. The level of detail is awesome, so if you haven't seen that episode yet, I really recommend checking it out. So, what did you think? If you know of any other real people who might have inspired characters in Golden Kamuy, I'd love to hear about them. Please share in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.